Take a look at this close-up shot of Ingrid Cavan in Fassbinder's The American Soldier. As she sings, "I was sitting by the river with my tears," there seems to be no sight of the slightest glisten of moisture in her eyes, despair in her brow, or winds on her face. There's an emptiness deep within her eyes that separates her from all her surroundings. But their concentrated hollowness can't help but draw the audience into its void. As the shot progresses from a close-up to a medium close-up, Fassbinder quite literally drags the audience away from her in proximity and connection. Nevertheless, her expression is like many of Fassbinder's imaginative figments, what Judith Mayne compares to blank television screens. Now look at this clip from the same film of the chambermaid stabbing herself in front of our protagonist. In comparison, the scene is almost congested with expressions, overflowing with the overacting that seems to shove all realism out of the frame. These extensively juxtaposed scenes still maintain a common objective: to alienate the audience from the film, to separate the two and prevent any deeper connection to it besides a surface-level viewing. A strong believer in Bertolt Brecht's theory of Verfremdung, or distancing, Fassbinder enforced the objective perspective of his viewers onto his film, letting not an ounce of connection be built between the two. But Brechtian tradition also dictates the ideology not only of content, but also of form must be made to manifest. Fassbinder accomplishes his ideology of alienation in not only his stylistic devices, but in his plot itself. In The American Soldier, for example, an American Vietnam veteran turned hitman is hired by a few cops to take out a few crooks, but ends up forming an attachment to one of the cops' girlfriend, Rosa. As the hitman Ricky distances himself from any form of emotional connection, including eventually Rosa, who he ends up assassinating, so does Fassbinder pull us away from fabricating a bond with any aspect of the film. He indulges in the neo-noir genre, allowing him not only to utilize but combine the elements of violence and sexuality to eliminate any trace of compassion. Women here are treated as objects that are frequently manhandled and mistreated, and dissolve into lifeless creatures when in the trance of men. With no attempt to build any emotional sentiment in scenes such as these, there remains nothing for the audience to connect with, precisely as Fassbinder intended. Generally, Fassbinder employs all his might to prevent us from watching the film as anything but a mere spectator, to deter us from reality so as not to relate with anything in the film. And he uses devices of theater to aid him in doing so. There are many elements in his films that seem almost staged. Besides the occasional extreme exaggeration of melodrama and overacting, a lot of Fassbinder's mise-en-scène radiates the energy of theater. Often his shots are composed to mimic theater, where all his subjects and frame strategically face the audience, as they do on stage. Similarly, he loves toying with extremely high contrast lighting, having lights resemble spotlights almost in several of his shots. This imbues a sense of theatricality to the diegetic elements of the film, and removes a lot of the realism that film can utilize to absorb its audience into itself. Take the final scene of The American Soldier, for example. The police officer Jan aims his gun at Ricky in this magnificent yet slightly unusually exaggerated pose of offense, resembling Gregory Peck's shootout persona. He draws the viewer in through this glorious Western-style shootout, what he called meeting the entertainment factor halfway, but keeps them at arm's length with the lack of realism incorporated. This makes the climactic confrontation and the final scene unbelievable but entertaining nonetheless, and reinforces his work as nothing but a spectacle to be looked upon.